Nacionales del país, listos para luchar por usted. Y si no ganan su caso, no cobran. Llame a la línea de ayuda legal ahora mismo.
Broadcasting from Now Media Network's headquarters in Houston, this is Purple Politics, hosted by political expert and commentator Alina Gonzalez-Dockery. Join us to discuss the most important issues affecting our nation with fresh, balanced, and objective discussion on the first bilingual media network in the United States. Purple Politics starts right now.
From an assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump, who is also the Republican candidate for president again, to calls for unity. May we all hope that this new phase, since this grave day this past Saturday, calls for not only unity, but tempering of the vitriolic political speech. And as all eyes are on the Republican National Committee with calls for courage, and in light of Donald Trump's defiance and courage after that fateful time, doing that amazing fist pump, because I know what my thoughts were racing as I was watching this unfold on live TV. But I also pray that those calls for unity, the calls for tempering of the vitriolic political hate speech that we have been experiencing for years now, will ring true on both the Republican and Democratic side. I am thrilled to be joined by Ryan Kahn, a former SWAT team member and business analyst now and consultant. And we're gonna talk about what we all witnessed on Saturday and the continuing questioning of how the hell did this happen? Where did the ball get dropped by Secret Service and the local law enforcement? Ryan, thank you so much for joining me. I know it was last minute. I really appreciate it. But before we jump into the meat and bones of what everybody's been questioning is how this happened, can you give me a little bit more of your background for my viewers, as well as what you are currently doing since your retiring of law enforcement?
Well, Alina, thank you very much for having me on the show. It's an absolute pleasure to be here in your presence and able to offer some insight onto this incident. As far as my background goes, I had a little over 12 years in law enforcement before I took early retirement to go into the private sector and begin leadership development, consulting services for entrepreneurs and business owners. And I used my background in law enforcement, which was very dynamic. I was a training officer, a certified instructor of over 17 different law enforcement disciplines. So developing and training and getting police officers in law enforcement to do their job to the best of their ability was the name of the game for me. I also actively served as a patrol sergeant, a detective sergeant, an undercover sergeant, doing all of those bearded nitty-gritty ruffian things. And I also served on the SWAT team for over a decade, including I was the team leader at the time that I retired. So I have a lot of experience in planning missions, the highest level of tactics, dignitary protections, large-scale events, riot control and crowd control procedures. And I just really like to lend my expertise on how things should go, how leaders should react, and how leaders should execute their services and their missions, and really just try to explain to people what was supposed to happen.
So obviously, it's all over the media. Everybody is questioning what went wrong, what was missed that fateful Saturday. That there was a loss of life. Corey Comparatore, who heroically dove on top of his wife and child, and two others were seriously injured that day. But we're starting to find out that there was nobody protecting this building. And I'm not law enforcement, but I can I mean, my first thought was, why wasn't there someone on that roof preventing anybody from climbing up? Why wasn't that building secured? So I would love to know, first of all, what was your immediate thoughts as you first watched or heard the news about this assassination attempt against Trump?
My immediate reaction was I was told, "Hey, Trump has just been shot," and I was like, "Whoa, shot!" Like, yep, they hit him in the ear or something like that. And I went and watched replays just a few moments after the live event. I was in an airport, so I wasn't watching live. And as I watched it, even though it was a replay, I was saying, "Get him off the stage, get him off the stage. What are you doing? Move, move, move." As the dignitary protection, there's something called get him off the X, right? So the X is the danger spot, it's the target, it's the point of potential catastrophe. And once you realize that you're on the X, you need to get off the X because that's where all the danger and attention is happening. So they did ultimately do their job. They made what we call a pig pile. They're effectively human shields at that point, and they did their job well. And then they coordinated. You can hear the communication. They did everything well to get him off the stage. They formed what's no fancy name as a diamond to get him evacuated to the armored vehicles and leaving the scene as quickly as possible. And as you said to the intro of the show, he raised his fist. I do believe that that was a gut reaction. You know, there's fight, flight, or freeze as kind of the human responses to adrenaline and stress. Clearly, that was a fight response. He wasn't going anywhere and literally said the word fights, which is just impressive that a human taking a shot to the ear would get up and say fight, fight, USA, USA. To the breakdown of what happened as a strategist and a tactical minded individual, in no way, in no way should that rooftop have been left open. Now, if for some reason it were true that it were just too dangerous to place a body on that roof for protection, it should have absolutely been covered and restricted. The protection for things like this happen more than 2 weeks out. More than 2 weeks out, the Secret Service will send boots on the ground to do the site assessment, to scout, to start clearing the area, to coordinate with local law enforcement and local county and city resources to make sure everything is safe. They will remove all kinds of debris and hazards from the area. So the fact that this was not more protected from the water tower that was behind it, or from the higher AGR portion of the building that could look down over it, or even just an additional counter sniper team put to where the entire roof line eliminated all of that dead space, that area that you can't be seen. Those are some serious questions that need some serious digging into, and actual people's names need to come forth and say, who made the decision to put this here? Who made the decision to deny that resource? Who made the decision to not add this asset into the equipment to that ultimately failed in protecting the former president?
Well, based on your expertise, and you have vast expertise, what goes through your mind? What are your thoughts when you hear that 30 minutes before even Trump arrived, that people were calling out saying someone's climbing up on the roof? And now we're hearing reports that an hour before the rally even was to begin, that this young man, and a troubled young man, was actually pointed out, and they were saying he was suspicious at that time. I mean, it seems like there were so many opportunities to prevent, even for this young man to even be able to go forward with this thing, maybe even to evacuate the area. I mean, it's to learn that he also had explosives in his car. I mean, this is a serious issue that we're going to be facing going forward.
So that's a layered question. I want to address all the layers.
Go ahead. I tend to do that. Sorry.
The hard part is that, you know, the weapon platform that he chose, which is an AR-15 weapon, almost certainly shooting 223, 5.56. That is an easy 400 to 500 meter weapon, right? So I'm just going to round it. The 150-yard shot that he took is really a chip shot to anybody that's even a remotely experienced shooter. It would be definitely within regular protocol to restrict everything 400 to 500 meters out. Yet he was allowed to climb onto a roof 150 yards away. And so that's a shocking component. The restrictions that are supposed to take place, you know, you have your primary, your secondary, your tertiary forms and your layers of protection, and just your boundaries, just your restrictions in the parking lots, just having police cruisers with flashing lights as a deterrent, and patrolled officers walking in certain areas just to mitigate, just to have the imposing presence of we're watching you. And then you said the timeline, the timeline, the reports, they're coming in a little differently, but yes, you're correct. There was at least half hour, an hour of a guy with a rangefinder. Well, I can only think of two reasons to have a rangefinder, and that's either to shoot something or hit my next shot in golf. And nobody was golfing. Okay. And so you see somebody walking with a rangefinder, the bees should have started buzzing at that point. If we determined that that was reported to law enforcement in some capacity, then the law enforcement officer should have been buzzing like bees looking for that person and their vehicle. And then he comes back carrying a bag and he accesses the roof. Now, I know it's still undetermined at this time whether he used the ladder or if he just climbed an air conditioned fence. But again, in that 2 week, and then there's a 2 day boots on the ground where they actually clear all the area out. All of that stuff should have been stripped away. There should have been absolute restriction access. They even put fake barricades, like temporary barricades with little string chains and metal and barriers away from these access areas. None of that was done. And I can't understand why none of that was done. And then let's just take, I don't know how to phrase this, the best case scenario for the amount of time it took to respond, about the 90 seconds when the actual recording says, hey, there he is on the roof. We can see the suspect inching his way into position. Even in those 90 seconds, the radio communication is going off from local to federal to Secret Service to Homeland Security, the reaction teams inside of the building, which were appropriately placed, looking over the event. All of them should have been able to respond, but no matter what, even if that officer couldn't pull himself on the roof or he dropped down to save himself from getting shot, even if they're surrounding it and trying to call it the suspect, which Ryan Kahn believes he missed for the major reason that law enforcement was responding, was hot on his tail, and he had to get up and take his shot. Now's his chance. Donald Trump turned just enough and he rushed his shot, and he was saved due to a delayed but a law enforcement response. If we could have just gotten Donald Trump off the stage, if Secret Service would have just been like, hey, get off the X, let's take a TV timeout here in the middle of your speech, I'm sure the American people would much prefer a 15-minute, 20-minute delay to their speech than a president who's been shot by a high-powered rifle. And those things did not happen.
And with everything that I've been watching, and obviously it's like it's almost being glued to the television with everything. You know, not only did this incident underscore the vulnerabilities in protecting high-profile public figures, I mean, former presidents, and, we're hearing calls that there wasn't enough Secret Service detail that they've been asking. One of the bottom lines is that we need a direct scope into how are we protecting our dignitaries, our leaders, because this cannot be going forward. But even more so, the blessing that I find in this, and my hope is that both President Biden and former President Trump will be true to the words, that they will be dialing back the rhetoric, that violent, vitriolic type of rhetoric. Ryan, I want to thank you so much. I hope you will join me again as further this comes out. I can honestly tell you, I just look at things at my base level. I'm not a gun expert, or I don't even own a gun. Obviously as a lay person looking at it, my common sense is, why wouldn't there be why is an individual having access to this building? It doesn't matter if it's across the street from the rally. Why were there so many holes? Why was there a delay? That we're hearing from even the sniper saying we had our eyes out on it. We were waiting for confirmation to act, and hopefully that will come forward in clearing up and better prioritizing standard operating procedures when it comes to security. Ron, I definitely want to have you back on, not only as an expert in all things law enforcement, but also I would love to hear what your take is with, now that we're getting into the last few months before this election, what you as a business consultant, accountant feel that would be, where our economy is and stuff. So I'd hope that when I extend my next invitation, we'll have more time to give you the due time for you to be able to explain more what you do and what your opinion is as to what our political landscape is currently looking like.
Well, thank you so much for having me on the show. And something I'd just like to leave you with as far as this specific incident goes is if people are worried about our politicians are only as vulnerable as we are complacent in protecting them. If we eliminate the complacencies, we won't be vulnerable.
Well, thank you so much. We're going to take a quick break and then we're going to discuss all things Republican National Convention in the next couple of segments. Thank you again, Ryan.
If you're on supplemental oxygen, heavy and awkward tanks can be a burden. Now you can leave home and leave the tanks behind with Inogen, portable oxygen therapy that moves with you.
With my Inogen, now I'm able to do the things that I've always loved. I just press the button here, and there's my oxygen.
Inogen systems are so small and light, you're free to leave the house without the hassles of an oxygen tank.
I could play golf again. I could go grocery shopping. I'm free again.
With the Inogen, I can handle my own oxygen. I can carry my own oxygen. I go anywhere with this. Look how small it is.
And right now, you can try an Inogen portable oxygen system for 30 days risk-free. Call us right now. If you qualify, we'll send you an Inogen system to use for 30 days risk-free. Your insurance may even cover your new Inogen system.
If you're on oxygen, you need to be using an Inogen.
Call 800-367-1753. That's 800-367-1753.
How would you like to go on a 5-star vacation for just $99? We're talking about the quality of a Westgate resort for $99. Not for one night, but for 3 fantastic nights at one of their luxurious destinations across the United States. And you'll even get a free $100 Visa gift card just for making a reservation. We've got some of the choicest destinations that you'll love in the United States that you can choose from for just $99 for a 3-night stay. Take your family, take a special loved one, but get away. Go on vacation with Westgate Resorts. Call now to make a reservation for just $99, and you get a free $100 Visa gift card. Call Westgate right now and book your vacation. Here's the number.
Call 877-930-3491. That's 877-930-3491. Again, 877-930-3491.
Are you nearly maxed out on your credit cards? It doesn't matter if you're using your credit cards for fun or to survive. At the end of the month, your statements come in, and you can either pay them or you can't. If you can't, late fees and interest rates get tacked on. And now you're struggling just to make the minimum payment due. Do you feel trapped? Am I talking to you? Good, because I personally researched some companies that can help you. They may be able to reduce your credit card balances by 50% and stop the late fees. If you qualify, please call our special debt hotline number right now for a complimentary free 5-minute consultation. Deal with your credit card problem now before it gets much worse and put more money back in your pocket. Trust me, I've been there too. Call right now.
Call 855-993-2096 right now. That's 855-993-2096.
So other big news was that Trump finally announced his running mate for vice president. He tapped J.D. Vance. And J.D., who is 2 years junior senator, of Congress. Some people may question, is he really up for the job of VP? But let's remember, Obama was only serving in the Senate 2 years before being elected president. So J.D. Vance made his debut as the Republican vice presidential nominee with a populist speech at the Republican National Convention. In his address, Vance echoed Donald Trump's anti-establishment themes, criticizing Wall Street and free trade. Now, that's the interesting thing, is it's almost like Vance's background, which actually I can't wait to see the movie or and read his book, Hillbilly Effigy, is so opposite of that of Trump, because Trump came from an affluent family. Trump came from a father who was already wealthy in his own right. And then you have JD, who came up from nothing, raised by a mother who was a son of an addict, who thankfully, and kudos to her, is 10 years sober. But they did have some differences. Now, I, for one, I will tell you the truth. Was I excited about hearing that JD was going to be the VP? Not necessarily. Was I hopeful that maybe it would bring someone that would be more open to independence and maybe those disenfranchised Republicans? But I have to tell you, I was impressed with JD's speech. I have been impressed in watching all of his interviews since his name has been made public. Now, Vance does stand in opposition to Donald, in the sense that Vance is not pro-corporation. He is not pro-Wall Street. He wants to bring the factories back to America. He is about the working class man. He knows the struggles because he is a self-made man. I mean, somebody who was former Marine, who literally was lived in poverty and raised by his grandmother, his Mima, as he affectionately related stories of him, and went to the Marines, and then on the GI Bill was able to get his degree and then go to Yale Law School, where he met his beautiful, loving spouse, Usha. And I have to say, I really thoroughly enjoyed when he, after her coming out and introducing him and giving him a warm introduction, I thought it was very sweet to see JD and his wife embrace and showing that affection. Now, JD did describe the event as a night of hope and celebration of America's potential resurgence. Vance portrayed Trump as a resilient figure, highlighting his survival from an assassination attempt and his persistence despite the persecution of all of the criminal trials, which many people have stated that some are very trumped up, no pun intended, charges or made up. But what I did enjoy was Vance focused more on his personal story, rather than on his specific policy positions. He recounted Trump's image after the assassination attempt. Many of us are still, even those that are never Trumpers or were very anti-Trump in the media, have admitted that that was an amazing show of courage. But Vance, who is 39, he'll be turning 40 in a month, was talking about his contrast between himself and President Biden, stating Biden's long tenure in Washington. Biden has been in Congress longer than JD has been alive. He's presenting himself as an alternative to Biden and the current Democratic extreme left wing, the socialists or the progressives. He also was linking his personal experiences and Biden's policies, arguing that Biden's decisions on trade and war adversely affected American workers and communities, much like Middletown, Ohio. Vance's compelling personal story was also the focal point of his loving wife, Usha. He shared his upbringing by his maternal grandmother and reflecting on his own mother's struggle with addiction. His anecdotes about Mama and his small town roots were intended to resonate with the working class voters. And his personal narrative was seen as a strategy to make him more relatable compared to Trump. The selection of Vance as the vice presidential nominee reflects the campaign's focus on youth and appeal to younger voters. But it was also important that Trump chose someone that he would like to work with. Now, I personally feel that Vance missed a very important opportunity on the big stage. In his interviews with, with media, he had stated that, yes, in 2016, he was a never Trumper. He was an anti-Trumper. He even stated that Trump could be like Hitler. But something shifted, something changed in his belief and realized that he was more aligned with Trump. I wish he would have stated that on the stage because I think that is an important message. See, setting aside Vance's speech, which he did discuss about unifying, that you do not have to be all in on MAGA. You don't have to be all in on Trump, but it was about unifying us as a people, unifying this country, and getting back to where our country was once before, being that it's not just an idea. The United States isn't just an idea. It's not a theory. We, the people of the United States, must become united. And I did applaud him on that. Now, other takeaways that I saw, the Republican show of unity at this RNC was when both DeSantis and Nikki Haley made appeals for unity, with Haley stressing the need to broaden the party's appeal, broaden the base, welcoming all types, and also reminding all of us that you don't have to agree with Trump 100% of the time to vote for him. That in fact, if you look, and it goes across, and I say this often, I have friends that are progressive. I have friends that are traditional Democrats. I have friends that are Reagan Republicans and also MAGA and major Trumponians. And I remind all of them, we are all in this together as a country, and we have more in common than we do not. And as JD reflected, it's good for all of us to have proper debates. It's okay to have differing opinions. But what's important is that we all come together and find what our common ground is. It's like Nikki stated, it is better to build consensus than to tear it apart. And to have the military families, the family members that lost, those Gold Star families that lost their Marines, killed in that tragic bombing during the evacuation, that was stunning. And there wasn't a dry eye. And it also showed the opening up of this RNC by having these people come and be able to celebrate those Marines that lost their lives. Also, to have the parents of Omer Nutra, whose son is now 208, almost 290 days captive hostage of Hamas. I question whether the DNC today would also invite those parents to come in and state, bring him home. Why are we not talking about the U.S. citizens that are still being held in captivity by Hamas? And that is something that other commentators from CNN also stated, would that be allowed in today's Democratic National Convention? Also, what's important is we saw something historic at this RNC when the president of the Teamsters spoke the first night of the RNC. That is unheard of. But it also shows the shifting of this new Republican Party, the shifting of the focus of this Republican Party and saying, we are welcoming everybody. The proof is in the pudding. So we'll see what happens after the RNC, because everybody puts out their best face, foot forward, put on their best face. And a touching moment occurred also at the RNC when Donald Trump Jr., who praised his father, showing his heroics and everything, actually gave up his, the first few minutes of his speech to his daughter, Kai Madison Trump, 17, who wanted to appear before the millions of people viewing the RNC to talk about her grandpa, to humanize someone that most of us don't get to see that side. And most of us don't get to see through media. through people like myself, commentators, because we do need to remember that we have a human being, and he is a grandfather, he is a father, and he is a husband. And I have to commend Kai because this was her first speech. This was her first time presenting, and she did phenomenal for a 17-year-old young lady. But also the fact that Donald Trump Jr., yes, he bashed Biden and his administration's policies, but he also called for unity. He also called for strength. He also stated that it was at the voting polls that people can continue to fight for this country. And he also praised his father for the courage that he showed after a bullet grazed by his head. So as we take this quick commercial break, we're going to go forward and talk about more election news. Tune right back in.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. By wearing a small device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers right away. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline today and learn about the latest CGM technology. Not only can a CGM immediately reduce pain, it's accurate, easy to use, and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. And if you have Medicare or private insurance, you can see if you qualify for a CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. We'll also provide free shipping of your new CGM, and we'll bill your insurance company for you. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline to see if you qualify for a CGM at little to no out-of-pocket cost.
How would you like to go on a 5-star vacation for just $99? We're talking about the quality of a Westgate resort for $99. Not for one night, but for 3 fantastic nights at one of their luxurious destinations across the United States. And you'll even get a free $100 Visa gift card just for making a reservation. We've got some of the choicest destinations that you'll love in the United States that you can choose from for just $99 for a 3-night stay. Take your family, take a special loved one, but get away. Go on vacation with Westgate Resorts. Call now to make a reservation for just $99, and you get a free $100 Visa gift card. Call Westgate right now and book your vacation. Here's the number.
Call 877-930-3491. That's 877-930-3491. Again, 877-930-3491.
As the Republicans are coming together and uniting and making the appeal for the independents, disenfranchised voters of both Republican and Democrat to come into their party, to believe in their stance and their, and their candidate. We are seeing just the opposite with the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is fraying, and there's a lot of infighting, and mainly because they are trying to still oust our President Biden from being able to go forward on his campaign for re-election. As President Biden is now coalescing and sequestering himself at his home in Delaware because he has come down with COVID for the second time, you have key Democratic leaders calling for him to step down. Representative Jamie Raskin of Maryland, a prominent Democrat involved in the investigation of the January 6th Capitol attack, sent President Biden a letter urging him to consider stepping down from his re-election campaign. Others, such as Pelosi, Schumer, and some are now saying that in private, Obama himself are all calling for Biden to step down, not only because they are stating that he cannot win the presidential election, but also because of the fear of what is going to trickle down the ballot. People are now stating, although the campaign for Biden saying he is the candidate, people are stating that Biden is a little bit more receptive to hear the pleas to step aside. And he has been showing that increased receptiveness. But what we're seeing here is that with Democratic leaders, such as Chuck Schumer, such as Hakeem Jeffries, privately conveying their deep concerns, and reports that Pelosi herself stating that if he is on the ballot, they will not be able to recapture Congress. They may not be able to maintain that majority in the Senate, and much less recapture the House of Representatives. We need to step back and really view this, because for years, questions have been mounted as to whether Biden has the capacity to rule, to lead, to govern this nation. And after that, disastrous, and it was a disastrous debate performance where he completely checked out. And this isn't because of a mere cold, and you can't blame it on COVID because he wasn't testing positive until last night. That Biden was just disastrous. And he even said it was a bad night, but it was beyond a bad night. But what we have here is that because the polling numbers are showing that he is losing in the main battleground states, and that people are not excited. And when you have polls showing that 65% of Democrats are saying that they want him gone, what does that tell you? What does that say to the 15 million voters on that voted for Biden in their primaries? And also, what does that say to the DNC when they were the ones who prevented there being a primary? I mean, let's remember, you had RFK Jr. running in the Democratic primary along with Marianne Williamson and others. And they and the DNC forced Kennedy out to go independent. You know, the DNC even canceled primary elections because they were not going to have any primaries that would put doubt on Biden. They basically made it where it was impossible for anyone to question whether Biden should be the Democratic candidate. And where does this lead? Is it leading towards Kamala Harris being put forth on there? Because the polls are showing that even though she polls slightly better, which I find highly doubtful considering her approval rating among Democrats is lower than Biden's, it still shows that she would lose. And I'm not one to put all of my eggs in the poll basket, because let's remember 2016. The 2016 polls were supposed to be Hillary Clinton was going to walk away in a landslide, to the point that even Trump was shocked that he won. But what we have is, so what, are we going to hand this over to Kamala? Because you have to. And is that where the Democratic committee wants to put all of their eggs and hopes in Kamala, who has lower approval ratings? And before all of you think that I'm saying this because she's Black and she's a female, give me a break. It's not because she's Black. We've had a Black president. It's not because she's a female. Because honestly, I will applaud when we have a female president. And this is coming from someone who, I guess I'm brown since I am Hispanic. It's not the color of the skin. It's not the sex of the person running for president. It is about their ability to lead. It's about the ability to govern. And honestly, Kamala has been a disaster Some want to argue that she's coming into her own now in 2024 as she's reaching her 4th year in VP as her vice president. But the bottom line is that she is still unlikable. For whatever reason, she comes off as condescending. She has the laugh, that her nervous laugh. She does the word salads, which, you know, yes, sometimes, and I do this too, our brains go faster than our mouths. But as these debates and concerns are persisting, the Democratic leadership, which are running up to the Democratic National Convention in a few weeks, and with this, they're caucusing the delegates, so you know, supposedly before the Democratic National Convention to lock in Biden. This has to come to an end as well, because what it's showing is that the Democratic Party has been pulled so far to the left, so polarizing to the left, that you have left all of us in the middle. It could be stated as well on the right, and I have been decrying that as well. But at this point, the progressive, ultra progressive, liberal, loud, pushing in political identity, identity politics has to end. And as we continue to watch, and we are now what, less than 4 months, actually a little over 3 months away from our national elections. It is going to be interesting to see, does the Democrats leadership push Biden, a stalwart for over 45 years, almost 50 years in that party? It should be interesting. And we're going to come back in a special portion to break down President Trump's acceptance speech and see if his near-death experience actually bring out the call for unity and lessen and temper the vitriolic hyperbole. I am Alina Gonzalez-Dockery. I want to thank you all for coming for another episode. I look forward to seeing you all again next week. And I wish you all a wonderful weekend.
If you're on supplemental oxygen, heavy and awkward tanks can be a burden. Now, you can leave home and leave the tanks behind with Inogen, portable oxygen therapy that moves with you.
With my Inogen, now I'm able to do the things that I've always loved. I just press the button here, and there's my oxygen.
Inogen systems are so small and light, you're free to leave the house without the hassles of an oxygen tank.
I could play golf again. I could go grocery shopping. I'm free again.
With the Inogen, I can handle my own oxygen. I can carry my own oxygen. I go anywhere with this. Look how small it is.
And right now, you can try an Inogen portable oxygen system for 30 days risk-free. Call us right now. If you qualify, we'll send you an Inogen system to use for 30 days risk-free. Your insurance may even cover your new Inogen system.
If you're on oxygen, you need to be using an Inogen.
Call 800-367-1753. That's 800-367-1753.
Do you have a car sitting around you want to get rid of? Well, here's a great idea. Donate your car now to help local veterans in your area. Yes, just make one fast call to the Veteran Car Donation Program. Within a few days, we'll come and remove your car for free. You can donate any car in any condition. We'll use our vast network to sell it. The proceeds raised go to help local veterans and their families. And you get a tax deduction. And all you need to do is make this free call. Clean your yard up, get rid of an old car, and help the vets. We make it easy. Make this free call now. Book your fast and easy pickup. Call the Veteran Car Donation Program now.
Well, the Republican National Convention has concluded, and day 4, did it live up to the hype? Well, Donald Trump promised a softer image. And what? In my opinion, there was softer moments to him. But one thing is for sure, he delivered Hulkamania. I personally remember the WWE days. I loved the Hulk, so it was funny. He's a caricature. He's an entertainer. So Donald J. Trump, a figure whose identity has been shaped by decades of tabloid celebrity, reality TV stardom, and presidential politics. His public persona is complex and multifaceted, leading many to question who he truly is. The RNC recently suggested a softer, more empathetic version of Trump, particularly after his near assassination in Pennsylvania last Saturday. The convention teased a focus on a unity, a word frequently mentioned but seldom defined throughout the event. And this final night of the convention aimed to showcase both sides of Trump, an aggressive alpha male and an empathetic, reflective individual, a grandpa, a father, and someone who is just caring. The night began with a display of hypermasculinity featuring muscle men and aggressive imagery, but it also displayed Alina Habba and other women talking on his behalf. So leading up to Trump, before Trump took the stage, I mean, we had his attorney, Alina Habba, speaking, and I thought she did a very eloquent. She actually got emotional, so that was nice to talk about her friend, former President Trump. And actually, it was interesting because I learned a little bit more about her family. And then what led into this? I mean, we're talking, we had rolling out, you had Mike Pompeo, then you had Hulk Hogan, who was a last minute addition. And as he has stated in interviews, after he saw, as he was watching the rally on Saturday night, like many of us, and saw that video of a bullet barely, hitting his ear and barely missing the mark of where we would be dealing with a president who was shot, a former president that most likely was dead, that at that point he felt that he had to come forward, that he wanted to speak. And then after Hulk, and I mean, I get it. He's super masculine, WWE, the Hulkamator and such. But after he spoke, and he also spoke as Terry Bollea, why he wanted to, after he did his character. We had Eric Trump. And I have to tell you, he was very impressive. If I were to compare Trump's speech versus Eric, I would say Eric was the more disciplined. He was the hammer. He was straight. He brought out the record. He denounced the lawfare and the impeachment and everything else that went up against Trump. But he also provided his perspective of his father, and he was, I would say, very strong. He was an incredible speaker, just like Don Jr. was. I still love Kai, the granddaughter from the third day, but he was incredible. And so you had this rabble rouser Hulk mania, and then you have Eric Trump, who is, very much his father's son, and spoke very sternly, very strongly, and passionately about his father and for the country, and calling for the unity, stating that it was time. But he also was, I thought, the hammer. He was the one denouncing what the Democrats have been doing, and bringing out the lawfare, the impeachments, the Russian collusion hoax, and all that. And in my personal opinion, there was an uptick. Like, that was great. The convention was going forward, and finally then came Trump. Well, Kid Rock in between. Personally, I thought that was a little bit downer, but then you have Trump. And Trump surviving an assassination attempt and amid his Democratic rivals' crisis, which that is a crisis. And I feel like we had yet another moment at the Republican National Convention where there was a missed mark. We have chaos. We have an implosion. We have an internal and external fight in the Democratic Party where they're literally trying to force our current president and candidate out of the race. I mean, it is sheer chaos. It is actual chaos. And I'll go into more detail on Trump's speech, but Trump didn't need to speak for an hour and a half, and that was the problem. He did not need to speak for an hour and a half. If he wanted to prove that he had longevity, mic drop moment, the moment he stood back up after being shot, after being dogpiled by his Secret Serviceman, and raising his fist in the air in defiance, mic drop. You have the ability to continue. You are not feeble. You are not frail. You are strong. Mic drop moment. He didn't need to go on and on and on for an hour and a half at the convention. He had the moment. He did not need to go into this. But I will say one thing. I was riveted, like many viewers and everybody that was in the audience at the RNC, riveted to hear him address all of us, all of the viewers, all of those participants, and tell us what happened at that fateful moment last Saturday at 6:11 p.m. And his speech detailing the attempt on his life and presenting himself as a solution to a troubled nation. His tone was perfect. It was softer. It was much tamer. Trump emphasized his message of his confidence, strength, and hope, declaring his intent to be president for all Americans. His speech began with that emotional recounting of the shooting, calling for unity in a divided nation. At one point, stating that when elected, he is going to be elected to represent all Americans, not just 50% of those Americans that voted for him, but all Americans, which is a contrast to what Biden, even though Biden was trying to say he was the great unifier when he was elected at 2020 and in his inauguration speech, the great unifier, he started off immediately berating and extolling a lot of vitriol towards the people that support Trump and voted for Trump. So Trump had a moment there where he actually stated, I am here to be the president of all Americans. I am here for all of you because we are the United States. We are united in this country. He could have stopped it right there. And honestly, I wish he had stopped it. We didn't need to hear any more about his policies. He has plenty of time to roll out what his policies is. And for those of you who think that it is Project 2025, that is wrong. It is a falsehood. And he has already stated that is not what is happening. He should have stopped it right there. That first 30 minutes was perfect. Done. However, that can't happen with Trump. Trump resorted back to his rally ways. It was an extolation and bombastic claims criticizing Biden, although he only mentioned Biden once, but going after Nancy Pelosi, calling her crazy Nancy. He even brought up the 2020 election, which I rolled back a decade. That's how much of an eye roll, because I wish he would just let that go, because so many people are past that. And then he started meandering. And that's when the Trump of what we always see came back. He went off script. He meandered. He I don't even know. He babbled so much that at one point I was begging him to please stop. First 30 minutes, absolutely effective, strong. He is a showman. I mean, even to the point that he was joined by his wife, Melania Trump. And when you look at the stage, after he finished his speech, Melania came out. He was surprised by her in this beautiful red suit, which is actually a repeat from when she went to France in 2017 to celebrate Bastille Day there. And his children come out, his sons like him wearing the iconic navy, blue suit, white shirt, red tie. JD Vance wearing the same. Ivanka and her sister were wearing white, and Usha, JD Vance's wife, wearing red. I mean, you had the iconic picture of the family and with some grandchildren there showing red, white, and blue. The bigger question is that after an event, and I'm talking in totality, will this carry forward? Can Trump show more discipline than even he had done at the last night? Because unfortunately, that is what happened. He became undisciplined. He went off script. I mean, we're talking about an amazing RNC. We have not seen a Republican National Convention that had so much energy, so much electricity, so much unity among the party members, in sharp contrast to that of Democratic Party, than this one in the modern history. Because if you recall, in 2016, they were threatening to pull the delegates to recast and pick a nominee in 2016 because they did not want Trump. So this RNC, this Republican Party is very much Trump's. It was not in 2016. It was not in 2020. This is Trumponian, as the Hulk said. And now it is time to see what happens, because the reality is this election is for Trump to lose. If he can stay on point, if he can continue to show the unity and the exception. I mean, when we had speakers, that included Tucker Carlson, who was an anti-Trumper. We had, so many diverse speakers, and it was a wonderful opportunity to show unity and excitement. So my hope is that we can see further that the new Trump, the new age of Trump, showing him as a human, will go forward. I am Alina Gonzalez-Dockery. Thank you for coming back with me as we wrap up RNC and look forward to seeing what, if at all, the chaos in the Democratic Party will lead to, and the Democratic National Convention, which is in only a few weeks. I wish you a good night.
This has been a Now Media Networks feature presentation. All rights reserved.
Are you nearly maxed out on your credit cards? It doesn't matter if you're using your credit cards for fun or to survive. At the end of the month, your statements come in, and you can either pay them or you can't. If you can't, late fees and interest rates get tacked on. And now you're struggling just to make the minimum payment due. Do you feel trapped? Am I talking to you? Good, because I personally researched some companies that can help you. They may be able to reduce your credit card balances by 50% and stop the late fees. If you qualify, please call our special debt hotline number right now for a complimentary free 5-minute consultation. Deal with your credit card problem now before it gets much worse and put more money back in your pocket. Trust me, I've been there too. Call right now.
Call 855-993-2096 right now. That's 855-993-2096.
Do you have diabetes? If you have insurance, you may qualify for a new continuous glucose monitor. With a CGM, you can continuously track your levels and trends, spend more time in range, significantly lower your A1C, and share important data with loved ones and caregivers. Most importantly, a CGM eliminates the one thing most people with diabetes hate: painful finger sticks. Take charge of your health. Order your new continuous glucose monitor today.